Hello and welcome back to our Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky 1 playthrough. In our last episode we entered the nation of Zeiss, which is apparently Techno City. We met a girl named Tita. We met her grandfather, who's an eccentric orbment creator, called Professor Russell, who happens to be the person that the note left in the package to Cassius mentioned. And he experimented a little bit on the Black Orbment that we inadvertently used against the Mayor of Rouen. It turned off all the lights in the city, so good for it. And now we're going back to the major factory to watch him run some more experiments on it. So let's be off. Hazel says, "Tita, everyone, how are you?" Professor Russell is in his workshop on the 3rd floor. He seemed pretty impatient, like he was waiting on something or someone. Well, let's not keep him waiting then. Professor Russell says, "Bah, another failure." Tita says, "Grandpa, we came to see if we could help." Professor Russell says, hello, Tita. And you two are here as well, I see." Estelle laughs. "What can I say? We were worried." "So, what are you working on?" Professor Russell says, "Well, as you can see, I'm trying to cut into the Black Orbment, but it hasn't been going very well." Joshua asks, "What seems to be the problem?" Professor Russell says, "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." And click. And he's turned on a circular saw. Estelle says, "Oh, what's that thing?" Tita says, "It's a circular saw. It's made of a special alloy that can cut through basically anything." Estelle says, "That ought to do it then." And it does not. Estelle says, it stopped. Tita said, "I thought that might happen." Joshua says, "It's on a smaller scale, but it's the same phenomenon as yesterday." Professor Russell says, "It seems like the Black Orbment is blocking the functionality of the other orbments, interfering with them in some way. And I doubt it was solely made for the purpose of killing the lights." Estelle says, "Yeah." Tita says, "But Grandpa, doesn't the effect spread like it did last night?" Professor Russell says, "Yes, good thinking. This interference with nearby orbments seems to spread out, moving from orbment to orbment like chain lightning. I'd put the range at about 5 yards, but if there are no orbments powered on within that range, well, then that's where the effect stops." Joshua says, "I see. That makes sense." Professor Russell says, "However, even with that knowledge, there's no way to know why it causes machines to simply stop without getting a look inside it. It's very troubling." Estelle asks, "Is there any way to destroy the thing? Maybe with a good scream and a really hard whack?" Joshua sighs. "Don't be ridiculous. Didn't she see the big saw do exactly nothing to it just a moment ago?" Estelle says, "Well, yeah. Anyone thought of trying fire? Maybe it'd melt down in a blast furnace or something." Tita says, "If we did that, the insides of it would melt too." Estelle says, "Oh yeah. Well, it was worth a shot." Professor Russell says, "Actually, it might work." Estelle asks, "Really?" Joshua asks, "You know of a way to burn it open?" Professor Russell says, "No, that's not what I meant. Orbital power, that which drives orbments to work, can't be used for this problem. We'll have to find a way that doesn't rely on any orbital energy." Estelle says, Joshua asks, "Is there even such a thing?" Professor Russell says, "The combustion engine. It's a device that burns fuel to generate energy. The idea's been around for a long time, but it's very inefficient when compared to an orbital engine. However, all you need to work on them are standard tools." Estelle says, "Neat." Joshua says, "I get it. Fire is the key." Tita says, "But Grandpa, I've never even seen one of them." Professor Russell says, "I'm pretty certain that there's one understudy in the central factory workshop. Oh, you'll need to get fuel as well." Estelle says, "Like oil or something?" Professor Russell says, "No, it's called gasoline. It's extremely flammable. There's likely a tank or canister of it stored in reserve." Yes, it should do the job. I'll start getting the tools ready." Tita says, "I'll help." Estelle asks, "Is there anything we can do?" I mean, I can't do anything super technical like Tita can. Professor Russell says, "Well, you could go and get the engine and the gasoline. It's going to be heavy, but U-braces should be strong enough to move it." Estelle nods. "Okay, leave it to us." Joshua says, "So, where would we find these?" Professor Russell asks, "Let's see." Joshua says, "Don't tell me that you've forgotten." Professor Russell says, "I've forgotten." Estelle frowns. "He just said not to say that." Tita says, Estelle, if you look in the operations room, you could probably find them." Estelle asks, "What the heck is an operations room?" Tita says, "It's a room with a bunch of orbital computers. It's on the 5th floor. We store all kinds of information there for safekeeping." Joshua says, "Wow, I didn't even know there was such a place." Professor Russell says, "Then I leave it in your capable hands." Estelle sighs, making coffee, fetching stuff. "Well played, old man, well played." "Oh well, let's go find this operations room thingy." Joshua says, "To the 5th floor then." So we need the lift to the 5th floor. So what's in here? I think nothing's in here. It's an outside door. Well, there we go. Estelle says, "Wow, check out this place." Joshua says, "This has to be the operations room." Supervisor Travis says, "Hey, you two. I haven't seen you before, so you mind telling me what business you have in here?" "My name's Travis, Senior Engineer and Supervisor." Joshua says, "Nice to meet you. We're with the Bracers Guild." "We're here at the Estelle says, "We're here at the request of Professor Russell, so if..." Supervisor Travis says, "Professor Russell? He's not in trouble again, is he?" Estelle sighs. "Again? You really don't have much faith in him, do you?" Supervisor Travis says, no, I realise that he's a genius. He was the one who developed the Capel unit after all. But even being acquainted with him results in no end of trouble. Tita, on the other hand, is an incredibly sweet girl, just an all-around good kid. Estelle laughs. Yeah, I get what you mean, but I don't think we have time to stand around talking in this case. Joshua says we need to find where the central factory stores its equipment. Supervisor Travis asks, oh, is that what this is all about? In that case, go right ahead. I'll show you how it works. This cylindrical device is a type of computer. It's called the Capel. These days, they mostly get used to assist in airship navigation, but this one is equipped with the fastest general-purpose data processing in the world. It can be used for anything from calculating material density to information retrieval. Now, for information retrieval, you have to use this front panel to select that mode. That will send the signal through the wiring and allow you to access the memory augment. There's a quartz inside that trains a rapid light pulse on it, you see. Then it simply extracts the data you want. So I trust you know how it works now. No idea, but sure, why not? Estelle grins. Yep, no sweat. Joshua says, I'm impressed, Estelle. You're way better with modern technology than I am. Estelle says, okay, so I lied. All that stuff went completely over my head. Supervisor Travis says, well, here's the setup. Change the mode with this panel. I'm sure you'll figure it out in no time. Sure, whatever you reckon. Capel, the Orbital Calculator Capel System version 7.0, copyright ZCF 1197 to 1202. Mode, information retrieval. Memory check, OK. Database accessed. Please input search term. Central factory. We want related topics. We want the combustion engine. Entry, combustion engine. A machine which generates usable energy by burning fuel within. Less efficient than its orbital counterpart due to issues with gaseous exhaust and noise pollution. Combustion engine, number earned 1, owner, maintenance chief Gustav. You know Gustav? We've spent a lot of time with the Gustav lately. The gasoline. Entry, gasoline. A liquid derived from the purification of Sorry, I'll start that again. Entry, gasoline. A liquid derived from the purification of the naturally occurring hydrocarbon compound known as petroleum, used primarily as fuel for combustion engines and as an industrial solvent. Republic manufactured gasoline, emergency stores, 20 mid-sized text, repository, Orbment manufacturing factory. And the haulage vehicle? Entry. Orbital haulage vehicle. Any wheeled vehicle powered by orbital energy. Widely considered uncomfortable to ride and very limited in speed, primarily used for transporting cargo. Orbment powered vehicle. Owner, no data. Repository underground factory entrance. Okay, so we need to go find Gustav and the Orbment manufacturing factory. Supervisor Travis says, looks like you found what you were looking for. Estelle says, wow, it's like a magic box or something. Joshua says, orbital computers are really something. Supervisor Travis says, as I understand it, Professor Russell's teacher, Professor Epstein, was responsible for the original concept. But it was Professor Russell's talent that made an idea into reality. Travis sighs. If only his presence of mind were on par with his intelligence. Joshua laughs. Well, Aidos isn't one to bestow 2 blessings on one person. Estelle asks, by the way, where can we find the guy who has one of those combustion engine thingies? The maintenance chief, right? Where is he? Supervisor Travis says he's currently overseeing the airfield, so you'd have to go there to speak to him. Also, the gasoline is likely at Orbment Manufacturing, in the basement. Talk to the staff there. I'm sure they'd be happy to get it for you. Joshua says Maintenance Chief Gustav is down at the airfield working on a combustion engine, and the gasoline is in the basement Orbment manufacturing facility. Estelle says thanks, you've been a big help. Supervisor Travis says think nothing of it, let me know if you need anything else. Okay. Let's go get the petrol first, as we're already here anyway. Rudy asks, what kind of guy is he? I tried asking her friends, but they didn't tell me much. I just can't concentrate. Too bad for you. Estelle asks, excuse me. Faye asks, what is it? May I help you? Estelle and Joshua explain the task set to them by Professor Russell. Faye asks, you need gasoline? I think we have a tank of it back in storage somewhere. I'll check for you. Faye used the intercom. Faye says, this is Faye. Got a request down here. We still have that tank of Calvard gasoline there in the warehouse, right? Can you send some down? Yeah, enough to carry. Thanks. Faye says, they're sending some for you right now. Joshua asks, sending? Estelle says, holy. Faye says, there we are. Estelle asks, is this gasoline? Joshua says, so that's what sending is. Faye says, neat, isn't it? This conveyor belt system isn't just for ordering goods. It's an entire network that connects the whole facility. Estelle says, convenient. Faye says, Professor Russell invented it. Faye says, originally it was just a series of tubes for sending products back and forth, but the professor completely rebuilt the system into something a lot more useful. Of course, getting all of the infrastructure in place was a gigantic pain in the... Estelle laughs. I can only imagine. Joshua says, we have to be on our way. Thank you for your help. Faye says, no problem. I don't know what you're using it for, but be careful with that gasoline. It has a tendency to fireball. If you say so, dear. We obtained a jerry can. Back to the first floor and out to the airfield. Landing port would be it, I reckon. Gerald says, hi, need a flight? The westbound airship just departed a few moments ago. Estelle says, no thank you, we don't need an airship right now. Actually, we need to talk to Gustav, wasn't it? Gerald asks, you mean the maintenance chief? He's not here at the moment. Estelle asks, what do you mean not here? Gerald replies, he went to Leiston Fortress 2 or 3 days ago. Some kind of repair emergency on a military patrol ship. Estelle asks, Leiston Fortress? Joshua asks, as in the largest base in the Royal Army out by Lake Valeria, up in the northern part of Zeiss? Estelle sighs, wonderful, he won't be coming back from there anytime soon. So what do we do about the professor's request? Gerald replies, I don't know anything about that, but the chief is actually on his way back. He just sent word to us. Estelle cries, oh hey, airship. Isn't that terribly convenient? Gerald says, speak of the devil. Estelle says, an orange airship. Hold the phone. Since when are public airships orange? Joshua says, no, that doesn't look like a regular public airship. The shape is wrong, and it's got work arms all over it. Estelle says, now that you mention it. Gerald says, that's a central factory vessel, the Lindblom. The Lindblom. It's the same model as the public transports, but it's had several modifications. It's used for large-scale maintenance and transport. Estelle says, a flying factory. Then the maintenance chief is on that airship? Gerald nods. That's right. Now's your chance. You need to talk with him now. Estelle says, we do. Thanks a lot. Joshua says, yes, thank you. Alright, so how do we get down? We get down via the stairs. Bartholomew asks, what do you think of her? Isn't she a beauty? This is the crown jewel of the Central Factory Fleet. The Lindblom. Old technician asks, what do you want? Estelle says, Old technician says, the Lindblom has a mountain of parts stored in her. It's dangerous, so stand clear. Estelle says, actually, we're looking for someone. Joshua asks, isn't there a maintenance chief by the name of Gustav on this ship? The old technician asks, what do you want with me? Estelle says, oh, well that's convenient, isn't it just? Estelle explained that Professor Russell had asked them to find and borrow a combustion engine. Maintenance Chief Gustav says, you're running errands for Russell, are you? But a combustion engine, Well, you've got good timing. I'll give you that. Estelle says, Maintenance Chief Gustav says, hang on a second. Estelle asks, does he actually have one packed onto this ship? Joshua says, looks like it. Maintenance Chief Gustav says, here you go. It's a heavy beast though, so be careful. We've received a combustion engine. And Estelle should have been absolutely flattened by that. Not only because you can't really carry a combustion engine in two hands. Anyway, Estelle says, yeah, you weren't kidding. But we can still manage to carry it. How? Howie? You know how big they are in cars? Okay. Maintenance Chief Gustav laughs. You've got some spirit to you for such a young girl. I like it." Estelle laughs. "Thanks." Maintenance Chief Gustav says, "It's a pretty interesting little coincidence. That old fart wants this thing, but right after I got it back from the military." Estelle asks, "Oh?" Joshua asks, "From the military?" Maintenance Chief Gustav says, "Yeah, the thing was unknown to them for a little while. They were using it for some kind of research. As a matter of fact, I only got it back today." Estelle says, "Huh, lucky for us." "What's wrong, Joshua?" Joshua says, "Oh, it's nothing. Now that we've got what we need, why don't we take it back to the professor?" Estelle says, "Sure thing." Estelle says, "Thank you, Mr. Maintenance Chief." Maintenance Chief Gustav says, Sure. Give my regards to the old man." Well, let's head on back with this extremely lightweight, extremely compact internal combustion engine. Where do we shovel in the coal? Estelle calls, "We're back." Joshua says, "We've brought what you asked for." Professor Russell says, "Excellent." Tita says, "Thank you." We handed over the combustion engine and the jerry can. Estelle says she weren't kidding about how heavy this thing is. Professor Russell says, "Yes, your brute strength was most useful, girl. Perfect timing too, as I've just finished preparing the tools. All that's left is to set up the engine and put gas in it. If you'll go and put on the finishing touches, Tita." Tita says, "Yes, sir." Professor Russell says, "And it's all set." That's big enough to be Estelle's coffin, and she was able to carry it. Okay. It's all set. Estelle says, "Wow, this thing is really clunky looking. Are all of these engines like this?" Tita says, "Yeah. It converts the energy given by the burning gas to power the tools." Joshua says, "So this way they don't need orbal energy." Professor Russell says, "Indeed. Now let's not dawdle. Let me flip the switch." And click. Estelle says, "Geez, this thing sure makes a racket." Joshua says, "It's definitely a lot louder than orbal engines." Professor Russell says, "That's one of its drawbacks, yes. But I doubt we need to fear activating the Black Orbment this way. Let's get started." Estelle gulps. Tita says, "Oh." Estelle says, "Whoa." Joshua says, "That's some serious sparkage." Professor Russell says, "Okay, shut it down for now. We've seen how much physical punishment it can take, and how much punishment our ears can take as well." Estelle and the others crowded around to get a closer look. A tiny scratch is faintly visible. Estelle asks, That's it?" Tita says, "That's incredible, and with the special alloy saw too." Joshua says, "Whatever it's made of, it's tougher than anything I've ever seen. Perhaps try diamond teeth instead of alloy?" Just saying. Professor Russell says, "But if we keep at it, I believe this would work. We're going to go through quite a few saw blades, though." Estelle says, so it's going to be a real test of patience then. Factory Chief Murdoch says, hey Professor, can I talk to you for a second? Oh, have you already finished the modifications? Professor Russell says, of course I have. Remember who you're talking to. Anyway, what is it? Is something wrong? Factory Chief Murdoch says, I just received a message from the hotel in Elmo for you. The Orbital-powered pump that supplies the hot water for their spa has broken down. Since they can't make any money like this, they'd like for you to come and try to fix it. Professor Russell says, ugh, you must be kidding. Damn it, of all the times for this to happen. Factory Chief Murdoch asks, if you're that busy, why don't you send another engineer over? Professor Russell says, no, that pile of junk is at least 40 years old. The younger techs have no idea what to do with anything that's not state of the art. What a pain in the backside. Tita says, Grandpa, maybe I could go over and do the repairs, you think? Professor Russell says, Factory Chief Murdoch asks, Tita? Tita says, you took me there to help with maintenance before. I think it'll be fine if just I go. Professor Russell says, I'm sure you'd do a fine job on the repairs, but that's not what concerns me. Factory Chief Murdoch says, agreed, there are monsters out on the roads. Tita says, but we can't just leave Mrs. Mao like this. Estelle says, if that's the problem, why don't you let us handle this? Tita says, huh? Joshua says, it's a bracer's duty to ensure the safety of the girls' roadways. Therefore, seeing that Tita arrives at her destination safely is our responsibility. Factory Chief Murdoch says, well, that's another story. If you're all with her, then we don't need to worry. Professor Russell says, all right then, thank you. Tita asks, are you sure this is okay? Estelle says, don't worry about it. Kids shouldn't sweat the details so much. Joshua says, if you're ready, then let's go. Tita says, thank you. Thank you both. Okay, Grandpa and Mr. Murdoch. We'll be back soon. Professor Russell says, take care, dear. Factory Chief Murdoch says, be careful out there. Well, sure, okay. Why not? Estelle says, so Elmo sounds kind of fun. There's a hot spring there, right? Tita says, right, it's a real nice place. My grandpa's taken me there a few times. Joshua asks, so which way do we go? Tita says, there's a big field outside the south entrance of town. You just follow that road due south to get there. Estelle says, got it, due south from the south entrance. Well, let's go then. All right. Okay. Right, we have a few new Bracer Guild requests. The Trap Plains Monster. The client is the Bracers Guild. It pays 1,500 Mira. Its difficulty is medium. A ferocious monster known as a chronocider, I think we said last time, has been spotted roving the Trap Plains Road. Racers from this branch are requested to deal with this threat immediately. Product testing. The client is Terry, the pay is 2000 mirror, the difficulty is low. A tester for a new sneaker model is wanted. Any braces involved in a wide range of activities are welcome. If you think your legs are up to the task, come see in the laboratory on the 4th floor of the central factory. All testers get a free pair of shoes, so act now. Something tells me that Estelle would be up for that. Haulage vehicle search. The client is the Bracers Guild, the pay is 1000 mirror, the difficulty is low. A haulage vehicle headed for the Wolf Fort hasn't arrived yet, but it was supposed to ages ago. A bracer from this branch is serving as its escort, but I fear they may have run into trouble. Please search the Trat Plains Road for them. Potent ingredient. The client is Ben, the pay is 1000 mirror, the difficulty is low. I am looking for a powerful ingredient to be used in new menu items currently under consideration at the Forgo Bar. Anyone with appropriate items on hand, please bring them to me. I am extremely busy, however, so please do not seek me out for details or clarification. Okay. Smokers Revolt. The client is Dr. Miriam. The pay is 2000 mirror. The difficulty is medium. It appears that someone has filched some cigarettes that were being stored in a cabinet in the clinic. Please find the dirty crook who did this. ASAP. Come see me on the 4th floor at the clinic for witness info and possible suspects. And the Irrita Road Monster. Client is the Bracers Guild, the pay is 2000 mirror, the difficulty is medium. A ferocious monster known as a Mercury Viper has been spotted roving the Ritter roadway. Bracers from this branch are requested to deal with this threat immediately. Right. Time to decide on who gets what from the shop. So Tita, you must currently have the PO3. So you could have the craft cannon. But I am going to give Gurkish knives to Joshua. And all I can afford is the craft cannon for Tita. I would have preferred the metal jacket, to be perfectly honest, for Estelle, but I'll upgrade her to the spiked rod. So we want to equip Estelle with the spiked rod. Give you the double spikes as well, just to keep you, hopefully, alive. Gurkish knives for Joshua, and Tito will have the craft cannon. I'm going to give you a white bracelet to prevent blind, and the silver earring to prevent sleep. All right. Yes, this is going to be a shorter episode, so that I can knock out the Bracers Guild requests in a bonus episode. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you in our longer next episode.